What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Ziggy Doom, man. Bringing y'all another podcast. Not really controversial, but I think it's a good topic. It's something that happens a lot, but doesn't get discussed very often, as usual. With my topics, I try to bring to y'all. So, without further ado, man, enjoy the podcast. What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Ziggy Doom. Welcome to another podcast. Told y'all we gonna keep these podcasts going, man. One thing I think I'm kind of good at is talking. I try to talk only when I have something relevant to say. I don't just like to blabber my mouth like other people. But we gonna keep these going, man. This topic right here is one that's near and dear to me. It's probably near and dear to a lot of people because it's something that we all, well, us parents deal with, people that have children. And it's kids being raised by single parents. Do they really suffer? So we can go to the statistics, right? Statistically speaking, a child that comes out of a two-parent home is more likely to do well in life than a child that doesn't. We can get into the statistics of it, but I don't really think it's that simple. Every situation is unique and there's pros and cons to both sides. So before we automatically assume that if a child was raised with two parents, they're going to be better off than a child that was raised with one parent, we got to look at the all the different variables. So I come from a single parent home, and most of my peers come from single parent homes. It was the normal thing to be raised by one parent, and it's not something that should have been normalized, and it shouldn't be normalized now, but it is a reality for a lot of people. And everybody I grew up with pretty much was from a single parent home. And it really, however it affected us, we wouldn't have been able to notice because, like I said, we all were around each other from single parent homes. It was pretty common for the father to just not be around, either not be known or never come around or come around sporadically. And sometimes you have fathers that are physically there, but that's it. And to me, I still don't consider that a two-parent home. If your mom and dad are in the house, but one of the parents is literally just there to exist, they don't talk to you, they don't do any activities with you, they don't support anything you do, I consider that a single-parent home too. Now, with the single-parent home, there's a lot of things that a child is going to miss out on, right? Obviously, seeing a relationship, seeing a duality of their mom and dad, how they interact and get along and pay bills and celebrate events, they're gonna obviously miss that. But sometimes, with that being said, sometimes it's not necessarily good to have both your parents in the house because children, they pick up on everything, whether we know it or not, and they do it from a very young age. Before they could even talk, they can recognize voices and words and different fluctuations in the voice. So, like if someone's yelling all the time, or using harsh words all the time, kids can kind of pick up on that, and it does have an impact on them, whether we know it or not, whether we can see it there or not. So if a child comes from a two-parent home, but they're in a very toxic relationship, there's a lot of fighting, a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling and cursing, then that child can perceive that in a negative way. They will perceive it in a negative way, or they will normalize it, which is even worse. And then they expect that their relationship should be the same way. And we don't want them to normalize that. So there's a lot of people that have relationships and they have a child, and on the surface it looks good, husband, wife, mom, dad, family. But how healthy is that relationship, and what examples are they setting in front of their child? Because some parents, I don't know if they're aware or if they just don't care. A lot of things they do in front of their children, they probably shouldn't do. There's no foolproof way to parent, but there's a lot of some things we should just not say and do in front of our kids because they pick up on it, whether we want them to or not. And if we are going to be that way, then we can't be mad at our kids when they grow up and they're the exact same way. I can't come in the house cursing and yelling and complaining about how my job sucks, uh, drinking, smoking, watching loud, inappropriate music and TV. I can't do that constantly with my child around and not expect them to pick up on it and even chastise them for doing that. Like my child comes in the house one day and curses, and I chastise them. Well, I, they've heard you curse all day, so what are you chastising them for? It's almost hypocritical. So it's not necessarily the best thing for a child if they're with the mother and dad if the relationship is toxic. Now we all know I've said this before. Some people just should not be parents. Some mothers shouldn't be mothers. Some fathers shouldn't be fathers. It's not something that you automatically become good at just because you have a child. You don't have a child, oh, now I'm a good mother or I'm a good father. Why? Because I have a child. That is not how that works. It's more intricate than that. So, me being a single parent, I can say this to the world. I fail as a father every single day. Every single day I fail as a father because it's something I learned from my children that happened in the past that I wasn't aware of, that I did or said or didn't do, and it affected them. And at the time, I had no idea. Like I had no idea how much of an impact my actions were on my children until they got older and we had those conversations. And so for me, it's always trial and error. Every day is a trial and every day is an error for me as a single parent. What I try to do though is the things that I can't control. Like I can control the example I set in front of my children, right? I can tell them to learn from my mistakes. I can teach them about things that I've went through in life. The harsh realities, the consequences. The struggles. And I tell my son every day, Junior. He knows. I say, hey, Junior, take notes. Because I don't want my children to go through my struggles. No parent does. We all want to do better for our children, give them a better life, and and have them learn from our mistakes. We don't want them to make the same mistakes. And I think most parents feel the same way. Try to get their child a better life and give them, lead by example. But even with all that, sometimes it still goes left because some people's perceptions become their reality. So if someone's heard something about one of the parents that they've never met, then they more than likely going to believe it. Whereas, you know, getting to talk to that other parent, getting both sides of the stories, have a better understanding, better idea, and go from there. Unfortunately, that doesn't really happen. Opinions get shaped by the primary parent, and children are going to go off of what they see. If they don't see one of the parents there at all, then they're going to assume, well, maybe they did abandon me, maybe they did deny me, maybe they don't care or whatever. But there's always three sides to stories. So when you are a single parent, your child will be missing out on the dynamic of a relationship, right? Obviously by design, but that doesn't mean they have to suffer. Suffering is different than I think suffering and struggling are different. Suffering is something that happens, but it can be overcome, right? Struggle is pretty constant. Struggles can be constant. Paying your bills, living check to check, those are struggles, in my opinion. Having a cold, an illness, or being tired at work, that's suffering. That comes and goes. So for me, I think suffering and struggling have a little bit of a difference. But the child doesn't have to suffer if you provide the child with the necessities, if you support the child, if you keep, an open dialect with the child, not just talking at your child, right? Saying, you gonna do this, you gonna do that, don't ask no questions. I don't agree with that way of talking. And this is just my opinion. Some parents have their own opinion. Some parents think whatever I tell you to do, you do it and don't ask questions. I don't agree with that. I think if I ask my child to do something and they don't understand why they're doing it, I will tell them why so they will understand and it'll help them. In my opinion, it'll help them do it. Take out the trash. Well, why am I taking out the trash? Well, not because I said so, more so because if you leave the trash in the house, it'll pile up, it'll smell, you'll have bugs in the house, things will be unsanitary. So let's take the trash out so that won't happen. And everyone takes trash out. And it's a necessary evil. So they understand more why they're doing it. They're probably more inclined to do it. Now, it doesn't always work, obviously, because you have some children who are entitled, privileged, or they just, don't care. And you got to be a little more stern with those. But one thing I will say about single parenting, I don't think that a man can raise his daughter to be a woman, and I don't think a woman can raise her son to be a man. Reason I say that is because men and women go through different things on this earth. They have different expectations, they have different abilities, different outcomes, different responses. We're built differently. So sometimes people say, well, a man can do anything a woman can do, a woman can do anything a man can do. I don't really agree with that because we're built differently for different purposes. And I'm not gonna get into that because we got all kind of different type of things out here nowadays, and I don't want to offend anybody intentionally or unintentionally. So I leave that stuff alone. But me as a man, I've been a man my whole life. I was a boy. I became a man. How I see the world and the world's expectations for me are not going to be the same as my daughter. So I can raise her to be respectful, to be polite, to be kind, to have a good work ethic. I can all those things. But when it comes to like women exclusive things like time of the month, right? Let's just put it out there. I have no idea how a woman feels during her time of the month. I understand it, right? The shedding of the line every month. I get that. But the cramps and the want to eat chocolate and the mood swings, I have no idea how to tell my daughter how to deal with that. Any of my daughters is like, hey, and I honestly kind of put that burden on their mothers. I will facilitate the sanitary napkins, and the chocolate, but the hygiene behind it and all the intricates and the mood swings, the cramps, the bloating, I don't know. It's just a struggle that I definitely have no idea about. So that's just one thing. And then, like the dynamics of relationships, women are more emotional creatures, whereas men are more physical. So it's kind of hard to give that dynamic or understand that dynamic. So I can tell, get somebody that will treat you right, that's somebody that will respect you, somebody that will, give, help compliment you. I can do all that, but the emotions behind it, I can't tell, it's like, hey, for me, it's simple. I don't put my emotions in it. You're not going to get to me emotionally, but I can't tell my daughters that, right? Like, don't be emotional. Don't show your emotions. It won't work. Well, in my case, it won't work. So I have to try to find a baseline and go from there. Because what do I do? What's the best advice you can give to your daughter if she tells you she met someone and she thinks she's in love? Well, how do they make you feel? Do they show you what they tell you? Are they more about actions or is it false promises? Things like that. How much time have they invested in you? Have they gotten to know you? What makes them make you feel that way? But at the end of the day, the emotional aspect of it, I won't be able to connect with my daughters as much as I will with my sons. And on the flip side, I don't think a woman can raise a son to be a man, and that may be controversial because you got women that I raised my son from baby to an adult by himself, and he became a good strong man. I understand all that, but did he become a good strong man because of the lessons he learned from you, the teachings he learned from you, or was it the lessons he learned and the teachings he learned from society? Because we put our kids out into the world, they're going to spend more time in the world than with us. they see, I've seen my mother's struggles. Whatever my mother did or didn't do, she found a way to keep a roof over our head. And she never complained about it. But my mother did not teach me how to become a man. She couldn't tell me, the trials and tribulations that would come with being a man, especially a black man. I mean, I understood you got to work to eat. I understood you got to treat people the way you want to be treated. I noticed, the world is pretty harsh. No one really cares. That was my mentality, but I didn't get that from my mother. I had to like learn that just through. I don't know if it was trial and error or I just realized, the world is hard. If you don't work, you don't eat, and no one really cares. So that's been my mentality. I just kind of go off of that. And that may not be the best mentality, but it worked for me. And I didn't get it from my mother, right? So I don't think my children's mothers would be able to teach my sons how to be men more than me. I just, there's no way. And I have my, the interactions I have with my sons, it's different than the interactions I have with my daughters because that's just how the whole world is going to approach them. They're not going to approach a woman and a man the same way. I mean, we can say it all we want, right? Equal opportunity, equal right. We can do all that, but at the end of the day, men and women are treated differently in this world. So I have to, you know, interact with my children based off of that. But some things are just universal, right? Treating people with respect, being polite, proper hygiene, all these things are universal. But when it comes to like the nitty gritty, a cop pulling my son over in a car versus a cop pulling my daughter over, things like that. Men are more, my sons appear more threatening than my daughters. If Junior walks down the street, he appears more threatening than if Malaysia would walk down the street, and because of those, they both got the same parents, same father. They both, got the same tutelages, but it's just society doesn't see them the same. And because of that, they have to act. I have to teach them to act accordingly. I'm perfectly fine with Junior walking down the street 8 o'clock at night. I'm not okay with any of my daughters walking down the street at 8 o'clock at night. Is that me not being fair? Is that me being biased? No, it's just me looking at the situation and understanding that my son can defend himself and is less likely for something to happen to him than my daughters. That's just society. That's just, I didn't make society. I just try to tell my children how to adapt to it. And it's not easy. Like I said, I fail as a father every day. I ain't never in my life, nor will I ever say I'm a good father, I'm a great father. I'm a mess as a parent. Say it to the world. I just try every day to do better and lead by example. That's the best I can do. And I'm okay with that. If I go to sleep at night, laying in my bed and I know, hey, I tried, then I'm okay with that. Because there will always be someone who will have something bad to say about you no matter what you do, especially if you don't conform to what they want you to do or what they think you should do. And that's fine because it's an opinion, and opinions are not facts. And I'm okay with that. I've been bashed and criticized and, so. But one thing we can't do, whether we a single parent or a relationship, we cannot normalize negativity. What I mean by normalize negativity is if your child comes home and they see you arguing every single day, right? Every single day, that's going to become the expectation. It's not going to be the exception. It's going to be the expectation. So that's all they're going to know. Every time I come home, my mom is yelling or my dad is yelling, or always complaining or always screaming, even always eating. That's another one too. Always eating. You're normalizing negativity because if your kids see it all the time, it has to become normal to them. Every once in a while, it happens. Okay, you talk to your kid, get through it. But normalizing it, that's where we wrong because they're gonna take that same negativity and normalize it when they get older. We can't get around this. We can't get around this. How many adults have you seen? Well, my mom and dad beat me, and I turned out okay, so I'm gonna just beat my kids, and they'll turn out okay. That's the problem with kids nowadays. They don't get enough whoopings. Is that really the problem with kids nowadays? They don't get enough whoopings. When you got whooped, did you fear your parent or did you respect them more? Which one? Think about it. I don't know anybody that got whooped and respected their parent more for whooping them. Because as parents, and I've said this before, we don't, how do you know if you're whooping your child out of discipline or you whooping them out of anger, right? You had a bad day at work. Oh my goodness, my coworker got on my nerves. I had to work over, my papers was missing, yada, yada, yada. And you come home with that pent up anger and then your child breaks a glass. Now, are you going to whoop that child because of the glass that they broke? Or are you whooping that child because you had a bad day at work, you got all this pent up anger and frustration, and that glass was a straw that broke the camel's back, and now you're taking it out on your child? And I guarantee you, more so, I think the latter is more than the former. A parent comes home having a bad day, and their child breaks the glass, and they are somehow able to separate their anger from work from their discipline for their child breaking the glass, and that's where the whooping comes from. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't think nobody that good. So the whoopers, because if you want to whoop your child, right? Whooping is subjective. You know, if you're gonna whoop your child, I say keep it below here. Whoop from here down. If you whoop it from here up, then that's just I think that's abuse. You don't have to put your hands on a child's face to get the point across. That's my opinion. And I'm not a fan of whooping or beating or any of that. Most people that know me know I'm not a fan of that stuff because I want my child to respect me. I don't want them to fear me. Fearing me is so easy. I can make all my children afraid of me. But respecting me, that's what I want. My children look at me and say, you know, I respect what my dad does. I respect what he says. So I'll do this because he asked me to do it out of respect for him. Not, well, if I don't wash these dishes, my dad gonna come home and beat the brakes off of me. How many times have y'all heard that? Because I know growing up, that was kind of a thing. I ain't washing dishes, my uncle come, I'm getting them hands put on me. You know, that's not right. And kids, that those things cause trauma. They may not exhibit it then, but they exhibit it growing up. That's what happens, is cause and effect. Like how do you show love through assault, through hitting? I'm hitting you because I love you. Think about that. Go to a relationship, a man and a woman. The man hits his woman and says, I'm hitting you because I love you. It's not gonna fly. So how is it gonna fly with your child? I'm hitting you because I love you. I don't know, y'all. Look, I guess that's a whole nother beast for a whole nother time. But we have to not normalize negativity. Single parent children coming from single parent homes can be prosperous. They can go out into the world, you know, and be positive. And if the child is living with one parent and not both parents, if the parents have an amicable relationship, right, that helps too. You don't have to be in a relationship, just be amicable when you're around your child. That's an option, right? Hey, I didn't live with my mom and dad, but you know, they both were in my lives and they both, you know, got along and they both, you know, showed good examples. And I know that parents that have a good chemistry have a better chance of raising a child to have good chemistry in the world. And that a lot of times parents, this happens when something happens, when one parent is bitter or the other parent is jealous or whatever. Let's say the parents break up. The mother has the child. Father, you know, doesn't. Father gets a girlfriend. The mother's mad about it. So now somehow, because the father has a girlfriend, now the mother is calling the father a bad person or doesn't do this or doesn't do that. And that's another thing we have to get away from. Bad mouthing the other parent when they're not there. Now, bad mouthing is not, we're not talking about telling the truth, right? If one parent is not helping take care of the child, that's not bad mouthing. That's what they're doing. But if you personally think the other parent makes bad choices or dates the wrong type of people, that has nothing to do with the child. What does that got to do with the child? So why would you even take that kind of, riffraff and introduce it to the child? Like, you can date whoever you want as long as it doesn't hinder the relationship with your child. But unfortunately, we live in this world where if you don't do what I want you to do or what I think you should do, when I want you to do it, then you're a bad person or a bad parent. If we have a child together and we're not together and you don't do what I think you should do, then you're unfair, you're a bad parent, that's just not right. But that's a struggle that's probably gonna continue to happen. But what I've learned is when children grow up, they form their own opinions. They can see things, in a different light. They can understand things better. When you're 3-4 years old, you're not really going to understand. But then when you become an adult and you see both sides, it's like, oh, okay. So we got to get away from that too. That bitterness and even the fathers, right? Like if a father of a child and the mother aren't together and the mother gets a boyfriend, right? You can't let that affect your relationship with the child. It shouldn't. Her personal life is her personal life. She can date who she wants, just as long as it doesn't, affect the child negatively. And same thing for a guy. You have to be okay with that. You cannot let that affect the relationship you have with the child. If you have a child with a woman and she puts you on child support or whatever, you can't let that. And I'm not saying it's easy, but you shouldn't let that affect the relationship with the child. You should still have some sort of relationship with the child, at least so the child acknowledges, hey, you're my father. You shouldn't just, well, you put me on child support, we ain't never speaking again, I ain't never gonna see you again. And I'm saying you shouldn't, but does it happen? Yes, it does happen. Because according to the state, they tell you, I've been paying child support for years. I know they say, hey, you're paying this court order child support. You do not have to have any relationship with your child. There's no obligation that you have to have a relationship with your child. By the state, paying child support, you're doing what you're legally obligated to do. And in that sense, if you don't have a relationship with the child, you're not breaking any laws, but I think the child can suffer if you choose to actively not have a relationship with that child because of, child support or the mother got another boyfriend or, girlfriend or whatever nowadays. So in this podcast, this one's kind of long. Does a child really suffer from a single parent home? I think they can, but they don't have to. They miss out on certain dynamics, but if that parent is diligent enough and decent enough and has the fortitude to take time to do for that child, support that child, lead by examples, I don't think the child will suffer too much to where they're a detriment when they go out into the world. But I will say this, some single parents should not be parents. They winging it and it shows. Because if you can't afford to take care of a child, probably shouldn't bring the child into the world. But that's a whole nother topic. I don't even think I'm ever gonna get on that topic because that's controversial, right? Takes two people to make a kid, but only one of them bring the kid into the world. So, child doesn't have to really suffer with a single parent. Just got to be more vigilant as a single parent in that child's life. And I will leave it there, YouTube. That will be all for this podcast. This one was kind of long, but the parenting topic, just like debt, it kind of touches a soft spot. And I really like to talk about it because I don't think enough people really think about their actions when they raise a child. Like everything we do affects our children, especially if all they see is us 24/7. So we got to just, I don't know. We can all do better, right? All of us. So that'll be it for this podcast, man. Until the next YouTube video, be easy.